Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion, and as you can tell from the title, I am once again venturing into the world of Star Trek. Unlike before, this is going to be a review of one episode of the TV series. Now, unlike with Everybody Loves Raymond, I don't plan on reviewing each and every episode of each and every series. But every now and again, I will review individual episodes, mainly the big ones. And of course, we're going to start off with episode 1 from season 1 of Star Trek The Next Generation, Encounter at Farpoint. Now, obviously, I wasn't around at this time, because this debuted a few years before I was born. But for Trek fans, when this episode premiered, it was a big deal. Because for one, first time Star Trek, anything new Star Trek, was on TV following the cancellation of the original series and then its subsequent revival in the form of the movie series, which was still going on at this time. I believe, I don't have the dates in front of me, but I believe that Voyage Home had just come into the big screen or was going to. So Star Trek was riding high, the end of the Spock trilogy, as I call it. And Paramount decided, you know what, we'll give a TV series another shot. And they did. And of course, Gene Roddenberry being involved, he's like, yeah, we got to get it. DC Fontana and a couple other writers got involved with it. In fact, Roddenberry and Fontana are the credited writers for Encounter at Farpoint. And you can definitely see their fingerprints there. Fontana, you can definitely see what she tries to do with her episodes, explore stuff, while at the same time introducing the new characters. And of course, Roddenberry, you can see his fingerprints on there a little bit, for good and for bad, from what I've read about him. I know there's a lot more behind the scenes drama involved with the production of these first few seasons, but there's not a lot of it to get into when it comes to this first episode. It's more later episodes, and I'll have to look into it a little bit. That's what I'm thinking, doing maybe video essays for some of the later ones, but we'll see. For this one, it's going to be off the cuff. The major ones with this one was that Q apparently was a later addition to the script, and that was when Paramount wanted to make it a 2-part episode instead of a 1-part. And I'm going to be honest, right off the bat, it definitely does feel like Q was added in later, because compared to what I understand of the later Q episodes, he's not really a major part of the story. He has that scene where he's sitting in the judge chair, then he vanishes from the plot other than popping in like a couple times as an observer. So he definitely feels like he was added later, and at times it definitely feels like 2 ideas they had that were put together in one. And the fact that it works at all is a testament to the writers and to the actors and the director, Corey Allen, who was a lifetime TV director. He did episodes of Magnum P.I., Mannix, Hawaii Five-0, Barnaby Jones, among others. He did several episodes of Next Generation and also came back to do some episodes for Deep Space Nine, so a little bit of Star Trek history there for him. Passed away in 2010, so hats off to you, Mr. Allen. In addition to Q being there, there were some other changes from Fontana's draft. It's mainly stuff like the gender of Dr. Crusher's baby, who was a current member of the crew. A couple of the other characters that would become recurring and fan favorites were also transferring with Riker. Picard had a different first name, so he wouldn't have been French. Or if he was, it wouldn't be such an obvious name as Jean-Luc. But other than that, that whole plot that makes up the latter half of the episode was still there, just slightly different. And of course, they have to change the lead-in when they add the whole thing with Q. A few minutes in, and I'm finally getting to the plot. The plot of the episode is that we see the Starship Enterprise D. That's right, we skip from where the film series has the A, now we're at the D. So it makes you wonder, what happened to B and C? Well, throughout the course of this show, we will find out a little bit about that, but that's another episode. With the D, we are introduced to our characters right off the bat. We have Patrick Stewart as Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Jonathan Frakes later on comes in as his first officer, or as he calls him, Number 1, Commander Riker. We got LeVar Burton of Reading Rainbow fame, which, my childhood right there, as Geordie LaForge. Denise Crosby as Tasha Yar, which probably an episode of the future I'll really be talking about what they do with her character. But Crosby, I think as many of you fans know, ended up leaving the series after the first season. Michael Dorn is the fan favorite Worf, the resident Klingon of the show. it's through him that on the show we get to explore Klingon culture a bit more. Gates McFadden as Dr. Beverly Crusher, the love interest essentially of Captain Picard, even though nothing happens from what I hear. Marina Sirtis as Deanna Troi, who was kind of a joke amongst the fandom with certain things, mainly some of the dialogue they give her from what I understand and other stuff. Brett Spiner as Lieutenant Commander Data, the android. Will Wheaton, of course, plays Crusher's son, Wesley. Another walking meme there. Then, of course, we got John Delancey as Q, perfectly cast in my opinion. This is going to be the first of 8 episodes we have a Q in this show. And then, of course, in the minor cast, we got the first appearance of Colm Meaney as Miles O'Brien. Started as an unnamed character here, he just kept coming back, and eventually they gave him a name, backstory, and even some story arcs before he went on to become one of the regular cast members on Deep Space Nine. But we're slowly introduced to a lot of these characters, some of them we don't see till later. Well, the Enterprise D is just flying along, and it runs into this weird energy signature that's blocking their way, and they are introduced to Q. Q wants humans to return to Earth because he sees us as a barbaric child race, and he decides he's going to put us on trial. And he transports the Enterprise D crew to a trial from the early to mid 21st century, around the time of the wars, the atomic wars. And this is where we see Q in that iconic outfit, which, funny enough, watching this, I'm like, so that's a judge's outfit from that. No wonder he decides to use it every now and then. He's mocking humanity, just like when he goes into the military outfit and the other outfits. He's mocking humanity, as he calls us a child race. And he's challenging them, and he decides, you know what? You want to prove that you guys are worthy of going throughout the stars? Alright, we'll put that to the test, but I'll be watching. And from there, we go into the episode proper, where the Enterprise is going to Farpoint Station, for one, to pick up Commander Riker, but also to meet with a representative there, to see just how their people create stuff without using a lot of resources. And from the beginning with that part of the plot, you can tell that not all is right there. There's something fishy. The representative, he is definitely hiding something, or someone, as it seems, because he's talking aloud like, don't do it like that. As we find out at the end of the episode, he is hiding an alien. It's like an alien creature. Now, when I say creature, I mean that in the best possible way, because it's like a space kaiju that kind of looks like a jellyfish thing. And they can actually change their shape, because its mate takes the form of a starship looking thing before it transforms. And what makes the scenes with this creature work is Industrial Light and Magic, because they did the effects for this episode, including creating the Enterprise model, 6 foot long, and it cost $75,000 to make. And even though they only did the special effects for this episode, they are credited throughout the rest of the series due to the fact that a lot of their footage was reused, stock footage there. So you got to credit them for that. And I have to give them that, because not only does it help sell the look of everything in this episode, but it is a little bit of continuity from a look standpoint and a believability standpoint, considering Industrial Light and Magic did the special effects for 2, 3, and 4 with the films. In my review of Star Trek V, I mentioned that's one of the things about it that gives it a totally different feel, is that it's not the same company doing the special effects. Not to say that they were bad there, like I say in that video, but you could tell it's just not quite the same. You're looking at it and go, something just doesn't feel the same. Here, even though they're dealing with a lower budget because it's TV budget, you still get that same sense of wonder. It's just, instead of like, ooh, ah, it's like, it's contained, but you still get that same feeling. And, of course, being able to help this race, they're able to pass Q's test for now, but you can tell there's something weird with Q. He's doing it begrudgingly, but there's something very subtle that he might also have a begrudging respect for Captain Picard and want to test him again in the future, which, of course, like I said, first of 8 appearances for Q, so we're going to see him and the Q continuum later on. Another nice little moment we do get in this episode is a cameo from DeForest Kelley, Bones himself. This was another late addition to the script, and when you see its placement in the episode, it does kind of feel like a late addition, like a scene that if it was any other character, it probably would have been deleted. But it's there as a nice little thing, having Data talk with him. I just love the dialogue they give Bones in this. You want my atom scanned all over space, boy? What about my age? Just the way Kelly delivers it, and the makeup effects on him too is like you definitely feel he's old, and then we find out how old Bones is here. It's like, oh yeah, that definitely looks like how someone that age would probably look. And this is what producer Robert H. Justman had to say about Roddenberry being able to get to Kelly on the show. It came about as a result, I think, of a meeting between them. I think it had been on Gene's mind, and he invited DeForest Kelly to lunch, and he says, "How would you feel about it?" Expecting Dee to say no, and Dee said, "I'd be honored." And not only that, not only say I'd be honored, but he refused to take any more than SAG's scale. He could have held us up for a lot of money, and he didn't, and it was just great. It really got to me, and the way he did that scene, it really got to me. That really does sum it up. The last thing, it's a beautiful, beautiful scene. That it is. It's mainly when him and Data are talking about Vulcans, and then talking about the Enterprise D. You know, it's a good ship with the right name. You treat her good, she'll treat you good. And as many of my fellow Trek fans have said in comment sections on many YouTube videos, that's the way you do a passing of the torch. Nice little scene, right amount of sentiment, doesn't oversell it. And the fact that Kelly did that scene for scale, I think says something about him, because like Justman said, he could have held them up for more money. I think part of the reason he didn't was part of the fact the film series is still going on. And since this was the first episode of the new series, it's a way to get older Trek fans into the show to see, you know, like, hey, Bones is here. He's like, and then that comment that his character says will get them into believing the new cast and the new Enterprise D crew. So thank you there. And of course, another little thing is that this is the last time that Kelly would appear on TV. I mean, they use stock footage from the original series in Deep Space Nine, but he doesn't appear in any fresh footage after this. One of my favorite little bits of trivia about the beginning of Star Trek The Next Generation is the fact that a lot of the actors didn't think the show was going to be successful, which, considering that the show was canceled twice in its original incarnation after season 2 and then again at the end of season 3, I can see why they would think that, even though the show was premiering in syndication. So a lot of them, mainly the one that comes to mind would be Patrick Stewart, did not unpack until they're like, oh, the show's going to be staying for a while. And of course it lasted several seasons, so joke's on them. It's kind of interesting that it lasted longer, so once we get to like season 4 episodes, I wonder if I'm going to find anything about them like joking about like, hey, we lasted longer than Captain Kirk. Now some other interesting trivia is that Roddenberry's original scripts did not include any scenes in the engine room, and because of this, Paramount was originally going to refuse to build the set, so Roddenberry revised the scripts and included it. Smart thinking on his part there, because you got to have the engine room scenes there for Enterprise battle scenes. Another thing is that Roddenberry was apparently against the casting of Patrick Stewart as Picard, which in retrospect is shocking because it's like, who else could have played Picard? It's one of those things like Picard and Stewart, they go together. It's just a perfect combination. He wanted a younger looking North American actor to play the captain, and he's holding out for another actor to audition. And thankfully, this is one thing he was overruled on, which that's one thing you'll notice a lot about Star Trek in this period, as you go from the late 80s into the early 90s, especially as Roddenberry's health starts to deteriorate, is that even when he tries to put his foot down, he'll start to get overruled a lot. And that's because, you know, Paramount and the directors and everyone else starts to take control of Star Trek. And then, of course, once he passed away, they started to do storylines that he would have disagreed with. Like, he would have definitely disagreed with a lot of what they did on Deep Space Nine later on, because he would have been like, that's not what they would do in the Federation. Like, in The Pale Moonlight, he would have definitely disagreed with that episode. Well, what Captain Sisko had to do, he would have disagreed with everything there. Been like, that's not something that the Federation would do. Which I get what he's going for with that, but it's like, we're still human. We're still infallible. We're going to have to make decisions like that. But anyway, back on topic. The producers felt that Roddenberry was looking for a new William Shatner type, and they decided to go with a different type of actor there, which I happen to agree. If they had gotten a William Shatner type actor to play Captain Picard, longtime fans, especially those that ended up not liking the show at first, would have really had more ammunition to fire. Because it's like, eee. And this is probably my favorite little bit of trivia, other than the first thing I mentioned about the suitcases, and that was that in some markets, when this episode premiered on September 28, 1987, it was in direct competition with the ABC premiere of The Search for Spock. And this only came about because the NFL players were on strike at the beginning of the season, which meant no Monday Night Football. And of course, because of this, ABC had to bump up the premiere of Star Trek 3. Which makes me wonder if there were any Star Trek fans going back and forth at that time, be like, alright, next gen's on commercial break. Let's see where ooh, it's a Ponfar scene. All in all, I think this is a good first episode for both the season and the new Star Trek show as a whole. As I mentioned before, it is a little awkward with how Q just seems to be shoved into the plot just to shove him into the plot. But once you set that aside, this episode does its job. It introduces all the new characters, the dynamics between them, like the scene where Dr. Crusher and Wesley go up onto the bridge with Picard there. You can definitely tell from how the actors act that scene out that there is a past between Crusher and Picard, besides the fact Picard brought the body of her husband and Wesley's father home. First of hinting that, I wonder if there was something romantic between them in the past. And of course, there's that whole fan theory that Picard is actually Wesley's biological father and essentially cuckolded Mr. Crusher. I don't know how much I believe that, but I'll have to watch the rest of the show. I just think it's an interesting theory. Get to see what type of person Tasha Yar is, how she feels about slavery and other abuses of power. See Worf is an honorable Klingon. Of course, also makes you wonder how did he end up on the bridge, which you will find out in other episodes. It also shows, that there is some peace between the Federation and the Klingon Empire by this point. But of course, we don't find out the specifics of that until Star Trek VI, which is several years away at this point. Of course, Data, makes you wonder, wonder how they came up with androids like this. And of course, at this point, other than Worf, we're not going to really be seeing any past aliens from the series for a while, because Roddenberry didn't want it anymore. Of course, eventually that's going to go away with the Romulans coming back, and then later on having more Klingons in other episodes. But for now, it's going to be new ones. And of course, in a couple of those time, we get the first appearance of the Ferengi. But the episode does its job everywhere. The plot is interesting. Definitely feels like something that would have been ripped out of the original series, which, another thing I've heard, which I'll have to look more into this, is that a lot of the episodes from this first series apparently were previously written ones, either for a fourth season that never happened, or for the attempted but abandoned Star Trek Phase 2. Which, another thing I read is that some of the sets they built for that were later reused here. Which I could see why they'd want to dust off some of those ones, just change the characters and change some of the characterization and points. They have the scripts, might as well use them. And I know they also apparently did that later on with Deep Space Nine, taking some TNG scripts they hadn't used and just changing some of it to better fit the fact they're on a space station instead of a starship, which only acquires minor stuff, and also there are some characterization changes. But it is what it is, they gotta reuse the stuff. And of course, Phase 2 eventually turned into the film series, so nice little segue there. I definitely find myself watching this again. I know there's a novelization of this episode out there somewhere that explains a few other things, which is an aside. It's nice to see the shuttle thing actually come off. It's one of the Star Trek books I want to track down and read, along with some of the novelizations and a lot of the relaunch novels and some of the other ones. I know that a lot of that stuff isn't canon, and it's hardcore not canon, not like the Legends material for Star Wars, like before the buyout, where it was in that weird canon thing that it's canon as long as it doesn't contradict what Lucas says in the ones that he's involved with. But all in all, it's a good first episode. If you haven't watched TNG and you want to, definitely start with the beginning. If you want to start watching Star Trek and you don't want to do the movies and want to start with the shows, this is a pretty good place to start with this one. And it definitely makes me want to watch the rest of the series. And of course, the whole time I was watching it, I was trying to put myself mentally in the place of a fan at this time watching this episode. And I could say that definitely did help the experience of watching the episode a lot better than it would have if I was just straight watching it from a modern perspective. Even though all the retroactive stuff that's happened with the shows, where some of the characters go that I can't help but know about due to the fact that Star Trek fans talk about it relentlessly, like what happens with Picard in a few seasons' time, the existence of the movies and all that. But trying to put that to my mind and just enjoy the episode in the moment, it definitely did help.